I keep track of the comments and the questions that I get on my videos, and I always look for patterns and things. And lately I've started to see a pattern in some features and even workflow concepts of things that beginners all the way to seasoned Lightroom users didn't know. So that's why I put together this video here. It's not necessarily all just tips. Some of it is more conceptual and workflow based, but I think it'd be interesting for you to test your knowledge here, see whether you're a beginner or advanced user, what do you know inside of here. Feel free to leave a comment, but let me say this. If you're an advanced user and you learned nothing and you think you know more than everybody else, there's no reason to leave a comment. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first one is probably one of the most important ones, and that has to do with masking. Whenever you go over here to the masking tools and you actually make a mask, because you're not going to see it until you have an active mask on the image here. So I'm just going to go, let's go to the linear gradient. In fact, no, let's go to landscape, and let's see what it detects here. If it gives me a good mask of the mountains, there we go. We'll click on that to create a mask. So once you have a mask created, you're going to see all these panels show up below: tone, color, point color, curve effects, all that. Now, where people get into a lot of trouble is they'll often have the basic panel open. So they'll create a mask, they'll have the basic panel open, and maybe these panels are rolled up, I don't know, but they look down and they see the all familiar exposure or shadows or something, and they see this adjustment and they start making an adjustment to it. Number one, the overlay doesn't go away. Number two, it's a global change to the whole photo, okay? And that's because you went down to the global section. Above that, the light color panels is where the masking tools are. So now if I come down here to the shadows section or the shadow slider under tone, that's where I can make changes to my mask. So it's just important to understand this is where you're going to make all your changes. Once you get down to the word basic and below, you're making global changes. Okay. I almost wish it wasn't even there. I almost wish this section went away, but it doesn't. So you just got to be careful what panels that you're in there, or else you're going to come down here and you're going to start making global changes to the photo. And maybe that's the idea. Maybe they want you to be able to make a change to a mask, but also make a global change at the same time, which I can see the advantage of. It's just, you just got to watch out where you're doing it so that the changes that you're making go to the part of the photo that you're trying to make it to. All right, next up we have one that I think really sneaks by a lot of people, and it's one of the most powerful workflow and speed tips that I know inside of Lightroom, and probably one of the ones I use the most. And that is the previous button. When you're in the develop module, you're going to see it down here at the bottom right hand corner. The way it works is I've done some edits to this photo. This is before, that's after. So it's basically some basic panel changes, some lens corrections, a little bit of transform, and a vignette on top of it all just to darken some of the edges. So I'm working and I hit the right arrow key. I've already gone through and kind of picked out my favorite photos. So I know every time I hit the right arrow key at this point, I'm going to be coming up to a photo that I want to edit. Well, I look at this photo and I realize the exposure and content of this photo are very similar to the last photo. And while I might not edit it exactly the same as the last photo is going to give me a really good starting point. So I just come down here to the previous button, click on that, and it will apply all of the previous changes that you did to this photo. It's that simple. All right, whatever the previous photo you were looking on, that's important. If you hit the right arrow key and you skip a photo and you go to the next photo, well, the photo you skipped was the previous photo. So it's just important, but then it's Lightroom, so you can come in here and change anything you want about it. But as I said before, this is where you realize the content is very similar, and the edits that you just did on the last photo would make a great starting place for this next photo, knowing that you would only have to come in here and tweak and change maybe a few settings. Very quick word from our sponsor. I have totally re-recorded my Lightroom system course. This is the course to learn everything about Lightroom. And this is your foundational course all the way to the advanced stuff inside of Lightroom Classic all in one place. It really is like getting 11 courses in one. Normally I would show you a whole bunch of before and after photos, but really the outline speaks for itself for this one because it has so much in it. It starts off with how to understand how Lightroom ticks. It's different from any program that we use. So you have to understand where to put your photos, how to get them into Lightroom, how to manage them when they're there. From there, we work into the develop module, how to edit. There's even an advanced section. Then there's some sections on saving and exporting and sharing your photos, printing and photo books, backing up your photos, even the other versions of Lightroom. So there's the tablet, the desktop, and the phone version. I want you to understand where those versions fit in and what they're there for. And then the last section, again, it's like a whole entire mini course, mastering catalogs. I get so many questions. Can you fix my catalog? I can't. Nobody else can. But if you can understand how it works, you can get on that path to fixing it yourself. Okay, so if you're looking to get that foundational kind of start on Lightroom, but also get a course that takes you all the way through all of the other stuff, this is the course for you. I hope you'll swing by right now. It's been totally redone, totally updated, and on sale. So now's a great time to check it out. Moving on to our next tip here. I'm actually going to give you a little bit of a 2-for-1. Think of this as almost 2 public service announcements in one for things that I commonly see people get tripped up on. The first is Lightroom is full of these little mini triangles. You have them on all of your panels. When you go into masking and you go and you apply a mask of some sort, you're going to see little triangles inside of there. You're going to see little triangles all over the place. You're going to see triangles located within areas that had other triangles, okay? So the way that you have to think of these triangles is when they're pointing left or right, they're essentially closed. When they're pointing down, they're open. So if you ever see something that's got a triangle on it that points left or right, that's Lightroom's way of telling you there's more settings inside of there. All right. And I had this come up. It wasn't with a mask per se, but recently somebody had sent me a message and they were in the color mixer and they were doing something with point color. Okay, and so we went in and we selected a color inside of there, and there's all these other controls that my video had with point color. This person wasn't seeing them. And that's because if you look down here under range, there's a little triangle. And that triangle's pointing left. So if it's pointing left or right, that means there's more to it. You click on it and it expands. But these are all over Lightroom. They're everywhere. So keep that in mind. If you're not seeing what somebody else is seeing inside of there, chances are it could be because they've expanded some more advanced controls in there. It doesn't mean you have to use those advanced controls. I never go into here, but I did have it open at the time of recording the video, so it's important to know that those are there. So that's public service tip number 1. Public service tip number 2 is there will often be a lot of settings down here in this little toolbar. It's this little toolbar that's directly above the film strip down there. And we can even make it a little bit bigger and the toolbar will shift up. This little toolbar will change based on whatever tool you happen to be using inside of here, okay? That toolbar can disappear if you accidentally press the letter T for toolbar. It goes away, okay? Press the letter T again, it comes back. So that's it. It's just one of those things. Your cat walks across the keyboard. Who knows what happens? But somehow that little toolbar gets disappeared and you watch a video, somebody's telling you about a setting and you don't see that little toolbar and its associated settings down there, because you should always look for extra settings down there. You don't see it. It's a quick way to get it back. The next tip is one that comes to you from a couple of different places, and it's the syncing batching feature inside of Lightroom Classic. And a couple of things have changed in Lightroom Classic where people have questioned how to batch process things. And it made me realize with all the questions I was getting, people never knew how to sync and batch process to begin with. So it's actually really, really simple, although it does seem to hide from you in a way. So if you head, we can do this in 2 places. I'll show you the library module first. The way it works is you got to have at least 2 photos selected, because if you don't, there's nothing to sync or batch process. So there's one photo selected, and I'll hit the shift key to select another photo. I could easily hit the shift key and select 100 other photos if all of them were there. And then let's give ourselves a little bit more space here. So now one of them is actually brighter when you're in library mode. If you look down in the film strip, you can also see that one of them is brighter than the other one. That's your most selected photo. That's the source photo. That's where the settings are going to come from. If you're in library, go over to the bottom right-hand side, and this is where some confusion comes up. You see a sync button and a sync settings button. When you're in library, pressing the sync button actually will sync metadata. That's not what we want to do here. We want to sync the settings from the photo. So I can click on sync settings. It's going to open up a window. Whatever I choose in here is what will be synced. So this is saying that maybe I applied a crop to this photo. Over here, I wouldn't turn crop on because I might not want the other photos to be cropped the same exact way. But you can turn on all the settings you want Lightroom to sync, hit synchronize, it'll do it. Come over here to develop. In fact, let's turn this one to a black and white and go do the same exact thing. We're in develop. I'll make my film strip a little bit larger. You can see my selected photo here. This is the photo I'm looking at. That's the source photo. Shift click. So now one, or again, could be 100 other photos. Now you'll see a sync button down in the bottom right corner. Just click on that. It's going to open up that same exact window, and you tell it what you want to sync. So I can hit check none, and then maybe just hit treatment profile, black and white mix, whatever I want to, but I'll go ahead and hit that. I'll hit synchronize. And then you'll see that other photo in the film strip there also got turned into a black and white. But this is the way that batch processing and sync has worked for 20 years, okay? Now, there has been a little confusion recently because for a brief period of time with some of the enhanced features like denoise, raw details, super resolution, you had to sync those a little bit differently. So just understand it's all done right now inside of the sync settings window. Last little thing here, just a little side note. I know that there's a very small but very, very vocal group that is annoyed that if you try to sync denoise, it basically locks you out of Lightroom because it's a time-consuming process, and while it's doing it, you're not able to do anything else in Lightroom. That's the way it is right now. It's a very small but vocal group. I get it if you have to do it. Just understand, number one, if you're syncing noise reduction, you're taxing your hard drive in an incredible way if you're trying to sync 100 files because those files are huge. You're going to take a huge amount of disk space. So I would avoid syncing noise reduction no matter what. But number two, I do know Adobe's aware of it. I have to assume that they will address it at some point. So it is what it is, as they say right now. But again, I do know Adobe's aware of it, and I'm sure at some point they will address it to try to keep it from locking you out from doing anything else. Next up, we'll move on to the last tip, and this one is more of not necessarily a feature that you might miss, but it's a workflow. It's a workflow idea and a workflow methodology, which is at the point that we're at inside of Lightroom Classic, we should be getting to masking sooner, okay? Before, masking's been around for a long time, but I used to spend a lot of my time in this, essentially the basic panel here. I would come down, do some color editing and whatnot, but I would essentially spend most of my time in the basic panel. We should be getting to masking sooner. Okay, masking is where you can do things based on specific parts of your photo, especially with the addition of the landscape masking, all of these other masking tools that we have here. We should really be doing the bulk of our overall changes, toning and color changes. We should be doing the bulk of them using these masks. Okay, so I can create a mask of just the mountains, and then I can go in here and make those brighter, darker, maybe go down and even do a little bit of dehaze to them, make them a little bit warmer, okay? This is where we should be doing the bulk of our changes. Once I'm done there, then I would maybe come back to the basic panel and do some, what I call micro adjustments. If I want the whole photo brighter, the whole photo darker, a little bit more contrasty, a little bit more saturated, whatever it has to be, the micro adjustments are gonna be here after I've done that masking. And that's a very different way of working than years ago how we'd work. So I would generally open up the photo, do any noise reduction, do any lens corrections that I want to get done to the photo, usually even crop fairly early on, but then I want to get to masking as fast as possible because This is where the true power in your editing is. This is where your edits should be done. If you're going to be doing any exposure and color changes, you should be doing them in the masking panel. Same quality of changes that you have in all of the other global panels, but you can target them to the parts of the photo that you want to. While we're on the topic of some things that people don't know inside of Lightroom, there's actually a fairly new feature that's worked its way in over time that has to do with a lot of the AI features that Lightroom uses and the order in which they need to be applied to the photos. So this one sneaks by a lot of people, especially because it actually is a fairly new workflow. So if you're looking for more to learn about the workflow and the order to do things, this is a great video to go to next.